So we'll be moving on now to the FTA motion. I'd like to invite Dr. Tao Ellenbogen from East Midlands, who is a first-time speaker, to propose the motion.
So can we restart the time? I was just opening the laptop.
Yes, we can restart the time.
Thank you. Doctors, we're here today at Junior Doctors Conference, an opportunity to dramatically shape BMA policy to reflect the desires of its members. But do we ever consider what those outside of these walls think when they hear Junior Doctors Conference? What do the public think when they hear the term junior doctor? Our names are more than just the labels we respond to. Names have meanings and significance, but most importantly, they are an incredibly important part of our identity. They affect how we see ourselves and how others perceive us. This has never been more important than with today's use of the term junior doctors, or often simply juniors. When the public hear junior, they think young. They think medical student. They picture an apprentice. How many times have you been innocently asked by a patient, "Oh, when do you qualify? You'll make a great doctor one day." How many times have you read a comment that we should be grateful that the public let apprentice junior doctors practice on them? How many times has our unprecedented real terms pay cuts been justified by saying, "They're juniors, they're still in training"? How many times have you seen junior doctors referred to as young doctors in the media, or even the Junior Doctors Committee being called the Young Doctors Committee? Names shape perceptions, and it is unacceptable that a 75,000 strong cohort of highly trained, fully qualified professional doctors, ranging in age from 23 to their late 50s, bear the name junior. Names are powerful. What do you call a police officer who hasn't reached the rank of chief inspector? What do you call a pilot who isn't a captain? What do you call a nurse who isn't a matron? None of them use the word junior. Our grades, roles, and positions vary more than any other branch of practice. The only term that unites us all is doctors. For internal purposes to distinguish grades, we should survey members for their preferred internal nomenclature. However, for external and patient-facing purposes, we should rename junior doctors simply doctors. The desire for this change is clear from the grassroots and from the fact that 3 regions all propose similar motions. Today, we take the first step to renaming the Junior Doctors Committee the Doctors Committee, to represent all doctors who are not SAS, GPs, or consultants. It is time we start respecting ourselves and no one else will. It is time we reshape our own identity. This year, we stand together as doctors. Conference, vote through this motion in full. No more juniors, just doctors. Full name restoration.
Thank you. Now, before we move on to the debate, because this is an open mic motion, I just want to remind people the rules of the open mic debate. We will be inviting online speakers from the green room, and we will be inviting speakers to speak for the motion on your right-hand side or speak against the motion on your left-hand side. So make sure if you up to the microphone if you're ready to speak. I'll give you some time by starting with the online speakers first so people can get into position by the microphone. And a final reminder, you have 1 minute because it's an open mic debate rather than the usual 2 minutes. Inviting from the green room, I'd like to invite Dr. Callum Wood to speak on this motion. Please, can you specify whether you're speaking for or against?
Thank you, Devla. I'm speaking for the motion.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Conference. I'm a senior registrar and I've come straight through as a full-time trainee. This isn't about me. There are people who are in a similar position to me who have had time out of program, whether that's to do a PhD, whether that's to do a leadership program, whether that's to do research, whether that's to fulfill other life goals like having a baby, raising a family. I'm in my 30s. Other people are similarly aged, if not even older. It's not about age, it's about experience. Colleagues in my position are making life or death decisions. They are performing life or death surgery. They are often the most senior person on site, and being called a junior is derisory. Conference, I urge you to support the motion, because we cannot go on calling ourselves juniors if we expect it to be treated seriously by the government and by members of the public. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to invite the members who will be speaking from the microphone to briefly introduce yourself before you speak, and we'll try and start the timer from that point there onwards. I'd like to invite the first speaker speaking against the motion. You have 1 minute. Please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Will Sapwell, cardiology ST5, which in his confused system possibly makes me a senior, junior doctor, I don't know. Essentially, this is already been fixed. The new de rigueur is doctors in training. That's being used. We've got a full palliative restoration campaign going on at the moment. This is not something we need to be kind of going over again, having it already been sorted out last year. And it's, you know, I think as well we need to speak to our SAS colleagues as well in the BMA. Calling ourselves doctors, where does that stick those who aren't consultants but aren't also junior doctors? It needs to be passed by them before we make any decisions on behalf of the whole association. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to invite our next speaker at the open microphone speaking for the motion.
Good morning, conference. My name is Malinga. I am a GP trainee in North London, and I am the Deputy Chair of the North Thames Regional Junior Doctors Committee. Colleagues and friends, UK medicine is in crisis. The language that we see in the press, as well as what we experience on the wards and in the communities that we serve, not only shapes our own beliefs and perceptions about our self-worth as professionals, but also significantly affects how those around us perceive our value. We have for too long accepted diminutive terms, such as junior and trainee, despite having completed high-level medical and postgraduate degrees, and despite years and years of honing our clinical skills and procedural skills. There is nothing junior about the responsibility that we bear when we attend crash calls that save lives, nothing junior about operating in the middle of the night, and nothing junior about independently managing chronic conditions in the community so that our patients can live better lives. I urge you to vote for this motion. The implications of this change will be felt by generations of doctors to come.
Please.
It is one important step to bring about positive culture change as part of a raft of measures that we must implement to take back control of our profession. Thank you.
We have a point of information.
Hello, I'm Kieran. Point of information is there is a report already out, done in 2018, that talks about what we should call ourselves as junior doctors, and I'm sure that's going to come up in multiple times when we're going through this. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to invite the next speaker in the room at the against microphone to speak against the motion. Please introduce yourself, please.
Hi everyone, Richard from Northern. So the use of junior and senior to delineate experience at a glance within a professional job is widespread from barristers to engineers. Within the medical profession, whilst it's clear that we all fall under the doctor's banner, there is still a requirement to be able to easily articulate who we are, that we are pre-CCT trainees in representations with wider non-medical audience, given that we are in the same contract and experience similar issues. This is a clear demarcation between the different sets of other doctors, such as consultants, GPs, and SASC. Whilst in a clinical setting we can use our grade, it would be too broad and too complex to be used outside of it. To my mind, it's not worth the work and cost required to unpick 50 plus years of its use. It doesn't seem worth it for a change that will fundamentally not alter how we see and treat patients. My name badge will still say my grade, and I will still introduce myself as however I see fit, be that doctor, my name, or my specialty. A single word will never capture our specific group and all its diversity and nuance, but it shouldn't be too much. We shouldn't worry too much about what's essentially an administrative collective noun. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to be moving back online for the next speaker. I'd like to invite from the green room Dr. Alex Chadwick speaking for the motion. You have 1 minute.
morning again. So I'd like to speak for this motion as someone that took a lot of convincing to come round to this idea. I thought that this was a minor issue and that ultimately full pay restoration was the main goal of our association. However, after conversations with colleagues and also patients, it's become increasingly clear to us that the media does not consider us full doctors and is confused by the term junior in many instances. As a profession, we need to demonstrate that we have self-respect. We need to demonstrate that we have skills and that and the title junior really does not suit the wide variety of skills and experience that we can all bring to bear in our professional lives. As to the point of specialist committees and SAS committee, I believe that this wouldn't necessarily conflict with them. We can consult with other committees to agree nomenclature for their own branch of practice. I'd also like to raise the point that if we were called doctors and this was a doctors committee, would we actually be voting to call ourselves juniors, or would we be happy with that? Thank you.
Moving back into the room, I'd like to invite the next speaker at the against microphone.
Hello, my name's Emma Runswick. I'm Deputy Chair of Council, and I come to this conference to represent all of the various other branches of practice in the association. I'd like to make a technical point about Part 1. We have lots of doctors in the association who are not SAS consultants or GPs and also not junior doctors. They sit in public health, academics, retired, and many other spaces in our association. What Part 1 is actually asking us to do is survey the people who are currently designated junior doctors about what we should want to be called. And I would like to request the proposer considers taking Part 1, therefore, as a reference. The second issue is that Part 1 conflicts with Part 3 as written. Do we want to ask our members what we think, or do we want to pick do we want to pick Doctors Committee? I think they're in conflict at the moment. Make your choice. Thank you.
Thank you. The points are noted. There'll be a right to reply after the debate has been had for the calls for reference, and there will also be a point that if Part 1 falls, and Part 3 will also fall. I'll be moving back into the room to the speaker, to the open mic. Speakers 4, I'd like to invite the next speaker. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Ali, ST6 in orthopaedics. I sit on the Mersey Regional Council. I'm speaking for the motion. I've been a doctor for 10 years now. I perform knee replacements, fix broken hips, carry out all other sorts of complex surgeries. Overnight, I'm the most senior orthopedic surgeon in the hospital. There's nothing junior about what I do. The term is damaging to our pay campaign, and it needs to be scrapped. Thanks.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next speaker, there's a clarification on the last point. If Part 1 passes, Part 3 will automatically fall, and if Part 1 falls, Part 3 will still be heard. I'd like to invite the next speaker speaking against the motion in the room.
Morning conference, my name is Brennan, I'm speaking from the Northern Regional Committee. In 2018, an orthopaedic consultant called Stella McNelly set out to solve this very question. She surveyed 2,000 people, she reviewed 6 previous projects, she wrote a letter in the Times, she got a load of correspondence back from retired surgeons who want to hark back to house officer days, and she formed a working group of 39 members who met regularly over 3 years at your expense in the HE offices at Stuart House. And what did this project come up with? They came up with 100 potential replacements for the word SHO, the best of which was central doctors, and they came up with the much derided title of postgraduate doctors in training. A vote for this motion is a vote to repeat a project as ridiculous as that, again at your expense. Let's focus on the issues that matter.
Continuing on in the room, I'd like to invite the next speaker for the motion.
Hi, Po Wang. Sorry if I've eaten the microphone, but I'm one of the UK Council and UK JDC reps. I'll just address the direct point. Brendan, this doesn't repeat all the various other malarkey with committees and reference groups and surveying. It replaces junior doctors with doctors. It's in the name, okay? Like we've decided, none of the other crappy terms. Now, with regards to the practicalities behind changing it to doctors, There is a pragmatic reason to do this. In this current state of industrial action where we are negotiating against the government, where we have to get public perception in our favour, it is a lot more beneficial to refer to doctors. It adds weight to our cause. It diminishes us and diminishes our negotiating position if we refer to ourselves as juniors. Now, in terms of the pragmatic aspects of having doctors as the default baseline term, that is perfectly doable. We can do the logistics behind that, and you can add on the SAS grades, the public health doctors, the other training grades, the consultant doctors, SAS, various other types to this
Last
default
sentence,
state.
please.
So in terms of pragmatism, in terms of practicality, in terms of elegance, in terms of not infantilizing the profession, I would very much be for this. Make up your minds, people.
Thank you. Moving on with the debate, could we have the next speaker in the room speaking against the motion? Thank you.
Okay, good morning. I'm Becky Akers. I'm from the East Midlands RJDC, but Declaration of Interest, I'm also a member of UK Council, and I chair the East Midlands Regional Council, which is a PAM branch practice body. So on that basis, I come to say to you that this is derisory to our colleagues, and we should not take this step. So who do we represent? So we represent postgraduate doctors in training, yes, but we also represent a whole bunch of others, which is why we can't be the PG Dick committee. I mean, not that we'd want to be the PG Dick committee, but we could. So we represent a whole bunch of others. But who do we not represent? So we don't represent SAS colleagues. We don't represent consultants. We don't represent GPs. We are not the only doctors. Therefore, this term is insensitive and also inadequate. And I would suggest that we don't want to create these kind of waves, these kind of divisions in the association at a time when we need
Last sentence,
unity
please.
more than anything else.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next motion, I'd like to remind our online attendees that if they would like to speak on this open mic debate on this motion, to join the green room. We currently have no speakers in the green room, so if you'd like to, you have a good chance of being called. Staying in the room for the time being, I'd like to invite the next speaker for the motion.
Hi, my name's Dan. So I'm speaking for the motion. I haven't got anything prepared, but I'm just speaking from a logical point of view. We are doctors. If you were to go see a patient, if you were the patient, would you say, hi, I am a junior doctor? No, because you don't want to be treated by a junior doctor. Junior is known as, has been seen as a demeaning term, according to the McNally report, which was previously mentioned. Whenever you have a media interview, you get told, what is a junior doctor? And I consistently say, this is incorrect nomenclature, it's misleading nomenclature. This could be someone who is 10 years postgraduate, running a hospital on their own at night for the majority of the day, being the only people patients see when they come in and are discharged and are treated. It does not make sense, and it demeans our cause when we're being conflated with students or trainee doctors that they use to justify us being paid an inadequate wage. So I think we urgently should reconsider our terminology being called a junior doctor for the benefit of the pay campaign, for the benefit of patients, and for the benefit of our self-worth. Thank you.
I would just like to remind those speaking in the room at the microphone, please stand slightly back. It'll make it a bit clearer for those listening in the room and online. Now I'd like to invite the next person speaking against the motion in the room.
Conference. Tom Hine-Thomas from Thames Valley. Let's start again. Conference. So what do SAS doctors, consultants, GPs and junior doctors all have in common? They're all underpaid and undervalued. Therefore, it's clear that no matter what we call ourselves, simply changing our name will not change how much we're paid or valued. We often compare ourselves to the law profession. What do barristers and doctors have in common? Oh, they're both called junior until they finish their training. So what I would suggest is that instead we should embrace, own, and be proud of this term and educate the public as to what it actually means. Undertaking the piece of work that the motion sets out will be an unnecessary opportunity cost when we should be focusing our efforts on the stuff that actually matters.
Staying in the room, moving on to the next speaker for the motion.
Hello everyone, my name's Lou. I'm a medical student in Brighton. I'm a medical student rep to the UK Junior Doctors Committee. This issue hasn't been fixed. We are infantilised as a profession in so many ways. I had my first ward placement the other day and I was already made to sit on a bin. And I think this is going to continue for as long as we don't respect ourselves. We need to make a change. We need to respect ourselves to make the Department of Health and Social Care respect us. Junior doctors are in no way junior. Leading a crash call is not a junior responsibility, and I'm sick of people pretending it is. This motion is symbolic about the movement of our organisation towards one which fights tooth and nail for our professional integrity, so I urge everyone to vote in favour of this motion. Thank you.
Still staying in the room, speaking against the motion.
Hi everyone, I'm Becky Bates. I'm here from the East Midlands, but I also sit on UK Council and UK JDC. I'm specifically speaking against Little 2 and Little 3 just for the purpose of the fact that we are, as the BMA, the Doctors' Union. Our magazine is called The Doctor. Every member, apart from our medical students who are future doctors, are doctors, and I don't think this is specific enough. I'm also concerned that this isn't what our members actually want us to be prioritising at the moment in terms of cost and in terms of what we should be doing right now. Obviously, it was submitted by multiple regions, but our member-led agenda didn't vote for this to happen now. I think it's really important we should look at the survey, absolutely, and find out what people do want. But I think making that change at the moment without considering, as has been mentioned, the huge range of other doctors that our Doctors' Union represents, I think it's not right now's problem. Thanks.
Point of information.
Okay, go ahead.
This was about a couple of speakers ago. Junior barrister is an archaic term that's not really used in practice for barristers. It's any barrister who's not a King's Counsel. And essentially that means that it's not about when they CCT, they're fully qualified barristers. It's an archaic term, it's no longer used.
Is that another point of information? Yeah.
Another point of information. Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a paediatric registrar in South Thames. The point of information, just because there's been some references to the current campaigns that we're running, with regards to Little 3, so renaming the JDC to the Doctors' Committee, because of the articles and bylaws changes this would require, the earliest this will be able to come in would be the summer of 2024. Thanks.
Before we move on to the next speakers, I'm just going to say, from now on, we're closing the speakers list, so if you're planning to speak and you haven't gone up to the microphone yet, I'm sorry you've missed your opportunity. We do actually have an online speaker in the green room. I'd like to invite Dr. Ochakapu, apologies if I mispronounced that, please introduce yourself and say whether you're speaking for or against the motion. You've got 1 minute.
Hi, good morning everyone. My name is Sijo Chipwe. I'm a junior doctor in the Yorkshire region, anesthetics and intensive care. I'm speaking in favor of this motion, and I'm trying to say that this should be voted for as symbolic to what we currently do. And even though we've been going on this path for a long time, making a change is not actually going to be easy. The amount of people that have come against and for shows that this is something that is touching to everyone. I would admonish that if we are to become consultants later, we're going to be fighting for our juniors, and we're going to be wanting to make them in the same platform that we all believe. I want us to make that change, think about this, and vote in favor of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we have a point of information.
Yeah, apologies, team. Somebody's asked a question about cost. So we have a rule in the Standing Orders of Conference, and if something has significant cost implications, it requires a 2/3 majority. Part 3 would have a cost, but I would expect, given that it's got a timeline to implementation, 2024, that we would slowly phase out use of materials that say Junior Doctors Committee and slowly phase in use of materials that say Doctors Committee, and therefore that wouldn't have, excess additional cost requiring a 2/3 majority. Though it does have cost, it has phased cost. We wouldn't just do a straight, which, if it was coming in tomorrow and we had to suddenly redo all of our materials, that would be significant. I don't think that, given the timeline, that would be the case. So I'm not suggesting that it requires a 2/3 majority. needs an explanation for the people who've requested it. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving back into the room, can I invite the next speaker against the motion?
Hello, hi. I'm Vinayak. I'm from the Northeast region. I'm a local BMA rep. I would like to speak against the motion. It's just to say that I've been a junior doctor for 5 years and I've never been called a junior doctor by any of my patients. So I don't think it matters because nobody's actually calling us that. But they might be thinking in their heads that I'm a junior doctor, but then why the double standards? I'm pretty sure anybody in this room, because I've had colleagues who worked with me who came in, I work in pediatric surgery, when they've had their children, they wanted to see the consultant directly and not be seen by myself. So I don't understand why the double standards. If you're thinking it, that's okay, but nobody actually refers to us as junior doctors. It's only an administrative term that we do, and also I think it's safer medical legally for junior doctors to be transparent about your level. And I think we have more pressing issues to look at than actually do this right now. That's all I think. I think there should be some kind of hierarchy to mention if you're a middle grade junior or a senior, but that's probably for another time. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to invite the next speaker for the motion.
Hi, my name's Arjun. I'm the chair of North Thames. I've been called a junior doctor, I think 4 times on Sky News over the last 4 weeks, so it does happen. This year is the full pay restoration year, but FPR itself goes beyond pounds and pence. It's a movement that is the first step in restoring the sanctity of our profession, and restoring our name is part of this movement. The term junior doctor has been increasingly troubling in our media campaigns. If you read the comments on any article that we do, it's all the same. It's all about juniors. And maintaining this derogatory misnomer will be a roadblock in future campaigns as well that the BMA takes. Optics are important and they do shape public perception. No one will respect us until we start to respect ourselves. We must stop this self-flagellating behavior. And it will be a very significant and symbolic win for the BMA to come out of this conference and to be able to tell our members that those that lead them believe they are leading doctors, not
Last
juniors.
sentence, please. Thank you. Inviting the next speaker in the room against the motion.
Hi, I'm Mike. I'm one of the neurology registrars. We don't introduce ourselves as junior doctors, but it does cover us as a term, as a group, when we're trying to describe a wide and disparate group. If we actually look at HE's response to Scarlett McNally's report, they didn't insist on a big rebrand. They just said in their external communications they were going to start using postgraduate doctors in training, because that's the group of junior doctors that they deal with. So that was a simple language change. That's what 2 is effectively calling for. That's fine, because the BMA can just start, whenever the word junior doctor would normally have come up, say doctors instead. And that's easy. I've changed documents previously where it said kind of junior doctors, and I said replace that with people, because actually we are people. But the point is that actually we can change language without changing everything. Switching to the doctors' committee, actually the term junior can be beneficial. It makes us sound cheaper when we're arguing for pay restoration.
Last sentence,
and
please.
that makes the public more sympathetic. The point there is that actually this might be the wrong time to make such a change. You can change a language without changing the title of the committee and causing conflict in the BMA.
Conference, we've had a balanced debate. We've had a call for a vote. In view of time, I think it'd be pertinent that we move to a vote shortly. Before we do so, I'd like to invite Dr. Tao, Ellen Bogan, up to respond to the debate, but also specifically to respond to the call for reference for part 1.
Thank you, Dervla. Thank you, Dervla. I've got quite a few things to respond to, so I'll go through them quick. Doctors in training completely reaffirms the public idea of us not being fully qualified. It does not include a growing group of locums and locally employed doctors. Full pay restoration is going on, but changing the name of JDC to Doctors Committee is easy, cheap, and almost instant change. They'll make FPR easier to achieve. The term junior doctor is used as a stick to beat us with into submission. We must disarm our opponents. Getting rid of junior does that. I'm aware of the McNally report. I've read it. FY1 central doctor and registrar was suggested, but they said junior doctors is a demeaning term. Doctors provides unity. We are able to delineate by diagnosis of exclusion. SAS, consultants, academics, GPs, they all have clear delineation. Part 3 is not in conflict as it talks about external nomenclature. Part 1 is internal, but I am willing to take Part 1 as reference.
Thank you. We've also had a further call for the whole motion to be taken as reference.
I will absolutely not accept that. We cannot cheapen ourselves any further. If we don't respect ourselves, how can anyone else will? We shouldn't be presenting ourselves as the cheap.
You've given your speech.
Desires.
Thank you. So we will be voting on Part 1 as a reference in a short moment. We will be taking this motion in parts, given that we've had speakers against multiple parts. And when we move to Part 1, it will be voting as it to be taken and accepted as a reference, but not into policy. And before we move on to the vote, I'd just like to remind people that in your right of reply speech, you're responding to the debate, not additional speech. So please keep to that. So in a moment, we'll be voting on the parts. A further reminder, I guess it's a reference. Sorry. We're going to hear all parts as Part 1 will be a reference, and then Part 2, 3, and 4 will be substantive. We'll be voting on each part as a separate. So the keypads at the ready, if you're online, poll at the ready. We'll be voting on Part 1 now as a reference. As we've had a request to read out parts, you're voting on Part 1 as a reference, and Part 1 calls for the BMA to survey members for more appropriate internal nomenclature for doctors who are not SAS doctors, consultants, or GPs. And Part 1 has passed as a reference. We'll be shortly moving on to the vote for Part 2. This is voting for Part 2 as a substantive part. And Part 2 is rename junior doctors for the purpose of external nomenclature. And whilst we wait for the time to tick down, I'll be presenting some fun animal facts or union wins, and I'll let you decide which one is which. In January, Unite secured a pay rise of over 20% for 200 airport workers in Luton. And Part 2 has passed. We'll be moving on to Part 3, voting on it as a substantive part. And Part 3 is rename the Junior Doctors Committee to Doctors Committee to reflect new external nomenclature. Our next fact: there is a species of octopus who will punch nearby fish out of spite. now moving on to the final part, Part 4. The voting is open now. Part 4 is engage with relevant stakeholders, including NHS employers, staff and patients, to adopt new nomenclature which is clear and understandable for staff and patients alike. And our final fact for this debate: last June, B&B secured bin workers 27% pay rise in Wealdon. And Part 4 has passed. Now, before we move on to the next motion, we have had a rider submitted. A rider is, in addition to this motion that we've just had a debate on, but we're taking it as an entirely new motion on the same theme. Rider should appear now on the screen. So it'll be Part 5, lobby employees to provide clear identification reflecting the new external nomenclature. I'd like to invite Dr. Annie Bown from Mersey to present the motion, and I'm not sure if you're a first-time speaker.
Hi everybody, my name is Dr. Annie Bown. I am a first-time speaker. I'm a F1 in the Mersey region and chair of Mersey Regional Junior Doctors Committee. At this point in my career, less than 1 year into working as a doctor, I've already lost count of the number of times I've been mistaken for other members of a healthcare team. It used to be that doctors were easily identifiable by their white coats. Then some doctors were able to be identified by their stethoscopes. Now stethoscopes can be found adorning the necks of PAs, ACPs, and physiotherapists. Patients should be able to easily know if their care is being provided by somebody with a primary medical qualification. In emergency situations, it should be immediately clear who is a doctor. I urge you to vote in favour of this rider to end confusion for patients and visitors, and for us to be easily identifiable as doctors, something that we've worked tirelessly for years to become.
If anyone would like to speak for or against the rider, you have a brief opportunity to join either the green room if you are online, or the microphones, for on the right-hand side, or against on the left-hand side. If not, we will move shortly to a vote. You have a few seconds to make yourself known. We will hear these two speakers and then we will move to a vote. I'd like to invite the speaker speaking for the motion. Please introduce yourself. You have 1 minute.
Hi there, my name's Dr. Stanley, one of the doctors in Broomfield Hospital in the east of England. So I just wanted to say that in the US we have clear identification for doctors. They have often very clear, in bright neon colours, badges which say doctor. So it's very clear that other countries do this, and if they do it, why don't we do it? We're also doctors, so it's very clear that we should identify ourselves as doctors as well.
Thank you. The next speaker speaking against the motion.
Hi, it's Kieran. I'm one of the East of England trainees in anaesthetics. Not quite registrar? Yeah. I think we're getting things a little bit confused here because actually the term junior doctor is purely used in the BMA. If you're not in the BMA, you are a doctor in training, and that is how it is referred in every single piece of information that we get. The way that we present ourselves, I think, is very different depending on where you're working. And I think I agree that as what everyone is saying, that actually it is confusing and it's almost potentially very much confusing for a lot of people, but it's how you present yourself. And that's not going to fix the issues that you've all come up with and identified. It is a way to look at lobbying and getting things improved, but I think we need to distinguish between what we're calling ourselves in the BMA versus what we are called within our own hospitals. And they're two different terms. Thank you.
As we have a little bit more time, we will hear one more speaker and then we'll move to a vote. I'd like to invite the next speaker for the motion.
So I've had the pleasure of wearing a white coat. It had doctor written on the back. I also had a badge on the front that said doctor and a lovely lanyard that said doctor. I introduced myself as doctor. I was still thanked for the thank you nurse for coming to speak to me today.
As that was short and sweet, we'll have the final speaker.
Thanks, sorry, there isn't a microphone in the middle, but this is a fairly neutral comment, just that there are only 15 instances of the word junior in the 2016 contract, and those are all in reference to the Junior Doctors Forum. The contract itself is for doctors in training. So essentially this wouldn't take much to change, but has anyone ever been issued an ID badge that actually says Junior Doctor? It normally says something else. So actually most of these changes wouldn't materially take much to do, because it isn't already in common parlance in the workplace.
Now, before we move to the right to reply and a vote, I'd just like to apologise to the person waiting in the green room ready to present motion 5. We will shortly get to you. It will happen. So I'd like to invite Dr. Bowen, if she would like to, if she has a right to reply before we move to a vote. Okay, thank you very much. In that case, we'll be shortly moving to a vote. We're voting on the rider, which is lobby employers to provide clear identification reflecting new external nomenclature. The vote will be shortly opening. And our final fact of my time of chairing for this time is that if you took all the elephants in Africa versus all the ants in Africa, the ants would weigh more. That could be a sign of collective organising. And part 5 of the rider has passed. Thank you, that was a spirited debate, and thank you for everyone to abiding for BMA policies. I will now be handing over the chairing